This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. We kick off another week, and certainly during the week we'll look back at a big weekend. The highlight of the weekend, of course, the Holy Bull down at Gulfstream Park. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. We're going to kick things off a little bit later on, just in a few minutes. Gary West, ESPN.com. He's a guy keyed into the three-year-olds. You had a nice column on the ESPN.com website just last week looking at 100 three-year-olds at it. Top 10 listed. Actually, he said his top 20 and then 80 that he kind of parsed out underneath that could be a little bit interesting. We'll talk about a little bit about some of those thoughts with him, looking at some of the races, the three-year-old events over the past couple of weeks. Frank Vespi a little bit later on from the racingbiz.com. Of course, his website takes a look at racing news from the Mid-Atlantic region, Maryland right in that mix, and there was a nice set of stakes races down at Laurel on Saturday. We'll look back at those four stakes with Frank, and then towards the end of the program, Andy Serling from the New York Racing Association, as they are plugged in and racing now on Mondays. We'll get some thoughts from Andy for this Monday afternoon down in New York. Mentioned this a little earlier on the Handicappers Report, but I do not want to ignore it on my show either. We talked certainly last week. Jim Mulvihill joined us talking a little bit about the DRF NTRA National Handicapping Championship that took place in Las Vegas this past weekend. First couple of days, Friday and Saturday. After Saturday's event, they took the top 50. They moved them to Sunday, early day on Sunday. Those 50 competed to whittle it down to a field of 10, and those 10 competed. I believe there was only 5 races. I'm just looking. There were only 5 races that field of 10, that last table of 10, had a chance to play into towards the end of the day. Winner of the contest, in the lead virtually the entire way, Jose Arias. You can read about him. Daily Racing Forum has a nice wrap-up column, and it seems like he's a guy, everything I've read during the weekend and subsequently, nice guy, easy to root for, very nice demeanor, so that's good to see. Kind of a fan favorite, gets the job done. A $338.20 win over the weekend. What the format was, a $2 win and place bet was made. So if the horse ran at least second, you made a little bit of money. So he wins with a $338.20 total over the 3 days, but barely squeaked it out. They came right down to the last race. The third place, coming into the last race, the person, Tony Bryce, who was in third place, hit the winner of the last race, but it just was not enough to get him up to the win spot. Jose Arias, his horse ran third in the last race, so he got no points, but the eventual second place finisher could only close the gap to $337. That means the difference between first and second place, $1.20. The difference, this is even worse. $1.20 means the difference between $750,000, the top prize, $200,000. $200, pretty good. I'm sure Tony Bryce is not walking away crying, but still, I'm sure he went back to his hotel room that night. $1.20, the difference is between a $500,000 difference. Also mentioned on the Handicappers Report earlier, we got to tip our cap to a local resident, Michael Piccola from Schenectady. Made it to the final day. He was in the top 10 going into Sunday, and he winds up the contest in 4th place. Good job for Michael Piccola. Again, a Schenectady resident. He comes away $310.80. He is, $28 away from the top position with his bankroll, but that nets him $55,000. So a nice weekend out in Vegas for, again, Schenectady resident Michael Piccola. And I tried to look up some of the other locals, and I couldn't. All week long, they updated the leaderboard, and then they didn't put the final leaderboard up. I'm sure it'll pop up, or a press release will come out. I'll report tomorrow on what some of the locals did. I will note because we talk to him every week on Tuesday and talk quite a bit about this contest. Gary Johnson from Beulah Park, he made it to the final day. He was in the top 50. He was down number 49, I believe. Although he bounced up, I say that, there were a couple of players in that final 50 that actually had 2 entries make it into the final 50. That is not allowed by the rules. You can have 2 entries going into the first 2 days. When you get to the last day, get to Sunday, you can only have 1 entry. So there were a couple of guys who had 2 entries alive going into the final day. They got cut out. So Gary was 49, probably moved up to 47th, actually, on the standings going into that last day. And then, as I say, I didn't see the final leaderboard, but I'll try to get that. We'll have Gary Johnson on with us tomorrow, so we'll get the update from him as well. But hats off to him for making that last day in the final 50. It comes up, I read in one of the accounts that if you made it into the final 50, you walk away with at least $4,000. So it's still a nice little weekend for Gary, but then incrementally it will go up depending on how much higher in that final 50 he got. So be interested to see what Gary's final numbers were. Also yesterday there was that a second huge carryover, huge double carryover at Santa Anita this week, and the pick 6 yesterday at Santa Anita wasn't easy to hit given the payouts. Paid $56,000 to 29 tickets. They added the carryover was, I think, another 400,000 maybe, but they added a couple of million to the pool. The winners broke out like this price-wise: $6, $8.40, $13, $5, $19.60, $15.60. Meaning it wasn't crazy. It was just one of those tickets. It would have been hard to string those 6 together for a budget kind of a ticket. I think you would have had to dip in a little bit. 29 people came up with it. But again, $56,000 payoff. 1 favorite in the mix. The $5 horse was the favorite. $6 horse wasn't even the favorite. And then you have the 13, the 19, the 15. Again, those prices indicate they weren't crazy. They weren't unfathomable. But to string 3 of those double digits together, you usually have to have a ticket that goes in a little bit deep. But that double carryover, and again, the second, a big double carryover out there at Santa Anita this week. Coming out of the Holy Bull on the weekend, trainer Karen McLaughlin said Cairo Prince is doing great. They're looking potentially at the Fountain of Youth on February 22nd. And this is interesting. I mean, this is 21st century training. Kieran McLaughlin says we'll get together, see what the figures and the sheets are saying, and talk about what the best program will be going forward. But they're looking at, again, the Holy Bull. They're also potentially thinking about New York. The Gotham, that's going to give them maybe a little extra time. But McLaughlin then says he doesn't like the intercourse up there at Aqueduct with a horse from off the pace. So he doubts they'll go there, but that would bring the Wood Memorial into play, and so he thought, that seemed attractive to him. But McLaughlin does go on to say it's either going to be Florida or New York. Those are their options going forward for Cairo Prince. Mark Casse also pleased with Conquest Titan. He notes that he's got a number of options, but staying at Santa Anita, or staying at Gulfstream, for the Fountain of Youth, certainly one of the options, but Casse then notes that not sure that the Gulfstream Park track suits him, and he may have to, in that he has to earn some Derby points, he may have to look to ship around to another track that may be a little bit more suitable to the closing style of Conquest Titan. Intense Holiday, who ran 3rd for Todd Pletcher. Pletcher was satisfied with him, but they're going to consider their options on going forward. Shug McGahee comes out of Saturday with top billing, saying he's not sure who was behind him, but he was impressed with the way they run, that he ran. We'll confer with the owner in deciding where top billing will run next. McGahee also noted coming out of also ran performance in the Holy Bull. Mr. Speaker probably going to go back to turf. And I said this earlier, I think if Shug McGahee didn't have top billing and honor code, I think if the connections, had only Mr. Speaker, they'd probably continue to try the dirt at least one more time. But I think when you got a couple of horses who look pretty potent to begin with, that gives you the options. Hey, let's look on that 3-year-old turf trail with Mr. Speaker, so he'll go back to the turf. Yesterday at Oaklawn, Will Take Charge put in another breeze in anticipation of the Don. Went in 114 down there at Oaklawn. Last week we talked a little bit about Wayne Lucas trying to figure out how to get down to Florida for the Don, trying to make flight plans. You know, Hot Springs, Arkansas, where Oaklawn is a little bit in a kind of an obscure location, so travel plans could be a little bit dicey. He's subsequently now decided to van down to Gulfstream, and Will Take Charge, expected to head down potentially 7 or 8 days before the Don. The Don will be held February 9th down at Gulfstream. So things, all systems seem to be go at this point for Will Take Charge as he heads down to the Don. All right, we will take our first break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Gary West from ESPN.com. Going to talk a little bit of the 3-year-old topic. Derby Trail, we're a couple of steps onto it, and I think things are starting to become very interesting as some of these horses, both out of the stakes races and the allowance races, are coming into focus. We'll look at some of the racing from the past couple of weeks on the 3-year-old side and talk 3-year-olds with Gary West right after this.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at CapitalOTB.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. Very happy to be joined now by our friend Gary West from ESPN.com. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very good. I've lost you in my ear again, just to tell the guys in the control room. There we go. Now I got you. Gary, before we get to some of the thoughts on the 3-year-old races from the past weekend and looking back even last weekend as well, the holiday weekend, want to touch on a story that certainly is notable on the Derby Trail and just get your thoughts on the situation with Shared Belief.
Well, he's obviously a very talented horse, and you certainly don't like to see any bumps in the road, any breaks in training on the way to the Derby. If things don't go smoothly, it's very difficult to get there and be effective. So I think this is a major problem. You know, he's obviously losing training. The good part of it is that he had already raced around 2 turns as a 2-year-old. But still, I think this is a major setback for him. I know they're downplaying the significance of the injury, and knock on wood, we hope it all is a minor problem that can be resolved quickly. and I think they need to take the attitude that getting to the Kentucky Derby isn't the most important thing in the world, and I think the horse, is not the smoothest of movers, and so they have to be especially cautious with him. I think he's a marvelously talented horse, but I think this is the problem.
I agree with your take totally, and I said last week as we were we missed the first workout, then they looked for Wednesday and Thursday and missed that, and then they were shooting for Friday, and I was saying, you've got that date on the calendar you have to make when you're on the Derby Trail, that first Saturday in May. So things are a little bit different along the Derby Trail, and you really can't get a straw of hay in your path. But we were early enough that I thought they could juggle things up. However, when they missed that one on Friday, now I think they're maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a real problem for them. And, one of the things Shug McGaughey repeatedly said about his success last year with Orb was that everything went perfectly. They never had to miss any training because of weather. They never had to, travel very much out once they left Florida. Once they were in Florida, everything went perfectly for them. And obviously, that is not the case already with Shared Belief.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eyes out there. But yeah, it certainly adds a little bit of intrigue early on the Derby Trail. All right, Gary, let's get into some of the races over the past couple of weeks. And I will tell people, I talked at the top of the show, if they go to ESPN.com, pull up your recent column, looking for a Derby hero, you list 100 prospective Derby contenders, Derby Trail horses, and I found it a lot of fun just to get down in the list. I think people may find some horses that'll be fun under the radar to focus on a little bit. As well as that list, you're a participant in the Courier-Journal Derby Media Poll. Their first version of that came out this weekend, and I'm looking at your top 10. And the first race we're going to look at, I'm guessing you weren't super impressed because none of these are in at least your top 10, but I do want to get your comment going back to last weekend's Lecomte down at the fairgrounds. We're going to watch the stretch run here. Vickers in Trouble, the number 7 horse. Wow, really impressive. I said coming out of this, I like Goldhawk a lot going in. And both Goldhawk and Albano are horses I want to see one more from. I think they've got a little more potential than maybe we're seeing in this stretch run here. But again, Vickers in Trouble, the Louisiana bred for Ken Ramsey, comes out of the maiden victory and really impressive in this Lecomte down at the fairgrounds again a week ago. What were your thoughts on this race?
Well, I like the horse certainly. He's fast and he can carry his speed. But if you notice coming down the lane, he switches back to his left lead. Horses will do that when they started to get tiring. And a couple of horses gallop by him beyond the wire. He's obviously a very good horse, and I think he's going to be a player here. I'm very skeptical about his ability to go much farther than a mile and a 16th. He wins here going a mile and 70. The time was okay. It was solid. He beat a solid field, but we'll see what happens in the Risen Star. I think he's going to catch a much tougher group there and won't be allowed to get away with 47 and 4, I think it was on the front. Although actually he was stalking 47 and 4. But he's a Louisiana bred who's bred to be a sprinter basically, and already he's outrun his pedigree. So we'll see what happens here. He's going to make some noise on the Derby Trail for sure.
And how about Goldhawk? I'm still, like I say, I want to see another from him because Steve Asmussen brought him back pretty quickly, and Asmussen seemed okay coming out of the race. I'm wondering if this just isn't setting him up for the next start a little bit.
Well, one of the great things about Steve Asmussen is he knows how to hit the moment squarely, and he wasn't aiming at this race. He's aiming at the races down the road. So this was a step in a progression. I think Goldhawk will move forward from this. That said, it had to be a little disappointing. He was sort of hesitant to get in the gate. Maybe he was, for whatever reason, anxious. So I'm willing to forgive this race and look for better for him in the Risen Star in Louisiana Derby.
All right, let's shift our attention now and look out at the Smarty Jones. And actually, I'm going to tell the guys in the control room, you can go right back to back as soon as you can pull up these two videos, both the Smarty Jones and then going back to the end of last year, the Remington Park Springboard Mile. We can go back to back here because I think they tie in nicely. We'll take a look first at the Smarty Jones. Tanzanite Cat gets it done coming down the stretch for, at Oaklawn, the red hot Cody Autry and Norberto Arroyo. But also running second here is going to be the number 6 Walt, and I found that interesting because Walt came out of a 4th place finish in the Springboard Mile, which was so productive last year with Will Take Charge. So not only will we watch Tanzanite Cat over Walt, over Coastline, here we go in the Smarty Jones, but right after that we'll bring up that Springboard Mile, and I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are Springboard Mile now, given what Walt did, looking at Louis Flower, and more importantly, maybe number 18 on your list, Noble Cornerstone. Your thoughts on both of these events?
Well, Tanzanite Cat obviously is an improving horse. This is an encouraging race because it was his first effort around 2 turns. And he beat a solid field. Walt already had proven himself. Coastline, a big disappointment here. I think that this horse now has had a couple of bad races in a row. One can be certainly excused. But Coastline just hasn't moved forward as a 3-year-old. Hasn't moved forward since his early starts at Churchill Downs. But Tanzanite Cat is obviously progressing, and I think he's going to be a factor. And Cody Autry has another good horse, Paganol, who broke his maiden at Oaklawn Park in a very fine fashion. And I think he's going to be a player as well. They're shooting at the Southwest for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we just looked at the finish of that Springboard Mile. I'm interested to see, as I say, you have number 18 on your list, Noble Cornerstone, who was a nice second and very lightly raced. He's one I'm excited to see come back. Your thoughts on him?
I really like him. He's a good-looking horse. When it comes down the lane, you can see him there. He's belly down, his head's down. He's just running for all he's worth. He actually galloped out with the winner, Louis Flower, who was very, very sharp going into this race. He had won consecutive races. I was curious, why did Noble Cornerstone come down to Oklahoma rather than run in the Damon Runyon? And then, of course, I saw Samrat win, and I realized why he came down to Oklahoma. This is a horse who I think is going to get better. And again, I love the way he moves. I love his determination. He just lowers his head and goes. I think he's a very nice horse, and is going to get nothing but better. He's a long-bodied horse, a long-necked horse. He's a long, lengthy horse. It looks like he's going to go on and on.
Yeah, Wesley Ward trainee. I'm excited to see what he does as well. And speaking of exciting, let's shift our attention now down to Gulfstream on Saturday. A couple of nice performances that I think have everybody abuzz. First up, we'll look at the Holy Bull, Cairo Prince. And this race is kind of interesting because coming out of that Remsen was so fluky with the pace. We wanted to see one to validate that, and I think this did it. I think now we know the first 2 finishers were legitimate coming out of that race. And the race, though run in a funky fashion, the proper horses were right up there. Cairo Prince will follow up that Remsen with a absolutely convincing victory on Saturday. But Intense Holiday, who runs 3rd in this race, also coming out of the Remsen. So again, I think that Remsen was validated. Cairo Prince, absolutely impressive, as noted. But Conquest Titan for Mark Casse, also very impressive, running against the grain of that Gulfstream strip. So as we watch the stretch run here, number 7, Cairo Prince, number 9, Conquest Titan, 11, Intense Holiday. Disappointment here, obviously, is Coup de Gras, who runs 10th in the field of 11.
Yeah, Coup de Gras had some trouble going in the turn, but I don't think this horse wants to go around 2 turns after watching him here. But Cairo Prince obviously was very impressive. And the surprising thing wasn't that he won, but that he won so easily by almost 6 lengths and beat a good field. I was disappointed. Some horses just didn't seem to fire their best shots here. Certainly, Wicked Strong didn't do much running. Mr. Speaker didn't do much running. But Cairo Prince certainly did, and he's the major player. He's not a horse who catches your eye physically, but he's obviously a runner. And I saw Kieran McLaughlin make the statement that he's very happy with the horse, and now we just have to keep him he needs to move forward a little bit because although that was a good race, a duplication of that race isn't going to get the job done on the first Saturday of May. He's going to have to take on the best of his generation at Churchill Downs. But Conquest Titan, who in his previous race at Churchill stumbled at the start and I think discovered a new running style. He utilized it again in the Holy Bull when he rallied from last to finish second. He had been a speedster early in his career. You probably remember the Breeders' Cup Juvenile where he just burned up the track and then went south. But that was a good effort for him. Intense Holiday continues to improve. In the Remsen, he actually ran a very fast 3/8 of a mile, final 3/8 of a mile. Of course, everybody did, but he actually ran a faster final 3/8 in the Remsen than did the first two horses. So I was looking for a good effort for him, and I think he's a horse who's had some bad racing luck along the way, but he's getting better and is going to continue to get better with more distance.
And now let's shift earlier on the program. Another race that I say is creating an absolute buzz, the allowance race earlier on the card. Top Billing. Top Billing coming out of the race a few weeks ago against Commissioner. Everybody was thinking both of those horses, Commissioner and Top Billing, would certainly be ones to look forward to. And Top Billing on the comeback effort certainly validated that opinion with an absolutely impressive victory, being back in the pack early, going wide on the final turn. And we'll watch the stretch run here as number 2, Top Billing, runs away from this field. And Saturday was also a day of flattery as well. Cairo Prince, I think, flattered Honor Code. Top Billing, perhaps honors Commissioner. But your thoughts on Top Billing on Saturday?
Well, I thought his race was, if anything, maybe a little more impressive than Cairo Prince's, simply because he rallied from far back into what was a relatively modest pace. They went 47 and change in his race, 46 and 3 on the front end for the half mile and the Holy Bull. And the final times weren't that much different. I think the Holy Bull was 42.16 and this was 42.66. So about 2.5 lengths difference between them. And when you see these horses stretching out to 1.25 miles, I think it's easy to see Top Billing making up that 2.5 lengths. And this is a lightly raced colt who is another one of those curling horses who, when he turns for home, is just belly down and reaching out and going for more real estate. I like Top Billing a great deal. That was a big race for him and sets him up for whatever stakes engagement they want down the road. But I'm looking forward to seeing this horse at 1 1/8 miles.
And Top Billing sitting on your Courier Journal list at number 6, Commissioner 5. Top of your list is Honor Code. We haven't mentioned that one, but before we do mention Honor Code, I just want to get to a couple others that are on your top 10 on the Courier Journal list that may be not as quite as high profile, and get some of your thoughts on them. Number 8, you have Candy Boy. Number 10, you have Samrot. Talk a little bit about those two.
Well, I thought Candy Boy ran a terrific race behind Shared Belief in the Cash Call. He made a premature move to get to the lead and then sort of flattened out in the last 1/16 of a mile. But he's another lightly raced colt that I like simply because he has continuously moved forward. As the 2-year-old, he progressed. His Cash Call was a big race. This horse has improved with every start almost. And, that is the key, because none of these horses at this point have run a race that would come close to winning the Triple Crown race, to winning the Kentucky Derby. Progression and development is what's important, and some of these horses peak early and then go the other way. What's necessary to have success at Churchill Downs is the horse who can take a step forward every time he goes out there. And I think we're seeing that in Top Billing, and we're seeing that in some others, such as Noble Cornerstone, and I think Candy Boy as well. Samrot is a horse who just dazzles people because he just runs his opposition off their feet. He goes to the lead and just keeps running, and has demolished everything that they've led over to him so far. I'm eager to see what he does when he takes on Open Company, but I'm convinced he's a pretty nice horse, and I think he's capable of running with the best of these.
And now give us your opinion on your number 1 selection, Honor Code.
Well, Honor Code has it all. He's physically as impressive as any 3-year-old out there. And he has the pedigree to suggest a mile and a quarter won't be any problem. And when I say he has it all, I mean he's also a horse who has room for development as well, because he's had some trouble in his races. As you know, he didn't break very well in the Champagne. He didn't break very well in his debut. And then in the Remsen, it was interesting to me that he learned a great deal there when he made the lead much earlier than he ever had in his career, because he didn't know what to do when he got there. And he sort of came out of the bit and came out of the bridle and was looking around and waiting for company. And then when he got company, he went to running again. He's a horse who's learning how to run, and I think he's learning from one of the great horsemen in the country, and that, of course, is Sugar McGahee. So I'm very confident that Honor Code is going to continue to move forward, and in my mind, he's clearly the front runner. He's at the top of the list and the front runner on the way to Kentucky.
And I have to ask you about one more that you're sticking with. I'm looking at your top 10 list. Number 7, you have Tapit Rich. Despite the 2 follow-ups to that brilliant maiden victory, the 2 follow-ups that haven't been that inspiring, but you're sticking with Tapit Rich.
Well, that's, I suppose, an act of faith there, because I was so impressed with Tapit Rich when he broke his maiden on a speed-biased track. He rallied from far back, and it was a good clocking for the day, particularly for a horse making his debut. And off that race, he became one of the favorites for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But between that race and the Juvenile, he became speed crazy. He just wanted to go out there and run rather than control his speed and distribute his speed. The key to success for any horse is distributing his speed over the distance. And if you expend it all early, of course, there's nothing left for the final quarter mile. And that's what he was trying to do, was just go out there and run. And he became speed crazy. So it became an educational process. And again, it's an act of faith in this horse's talent and in the talent of Bob Baffert to get him turned in the right direction. I'm confident that'll happen.
And before we let you go, any other horses you want to mention, maybe somebody under the radar that we should be paying attention to?
Well, we talked a moment ago about the Smarty Jones. I think a horse named Firestarter, who disappointed in that race. He went off, 4 or 5 to 1 maybe, and finished 5th or 6th. I thought he ran an interesting race because he had some trouble in the race. He was wide. He did everything wrong. But when he finally leveled off and went to running, he closed some ground, and then he galloped out very strongly. I think Firestarter is a talented horse who's trying to figure things out here, and once he does, he's going to be a horse who could have an impact in the road to the Derby.
I'm trying to think, and I think it was Jeremy Plonk. I had him on last Wednesday, and one of the guests, and I think it was Jeremy, said exactly the same thing. So now we've got 2 comments. Definitely have to pay a little bit of attention to Firestarter coming out of the Smarty Jones. Gary, as always, appreciate the visit. I will again tell people to check out your most recent ESPN.com column, Looking for a Derby Hero, which lists 100 prospects to keep your eyes on. Also, again, you're a participant in that Courier-Journal Derby poll, which came out for the inaugural version yesterday, and I have that linked over on Equidaily as well. And check out all of Gary's work on ESPN.com going forward. Gary, again, thanks for the visit.
Well, Seth, I always enjoy it. Thank you very much.
All right, Gary West, ESPN.com. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Frank Vespi from TheRacingBiz.com. Stay tuned.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country.
Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Cassano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As noted before the break, happy to be joined now by Frank Vespi of TheRacingBiz.com. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Seth. Nice to be with you.
Always happy to have you on board. Again, TheRacingBiz.com concentrates on racing news from the Mid-Atlantic region, Maryland part of that, and of course there was a good 4-race series of stakes down at Laurel this past Saturday. We want to talk a little bit about those. We had Dave Rodman on last week kind of previewing the action. I was really anxious to dive into the 3-year-old race. I'm a big fan of this joint custody. We'll get to that in a moment. But before we do some of the racing action, Frank, just again, give people a little update and a little info if people aren't familiar with the Racing Biz. What's it all about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Seth. The Racing Biz, which is at TheRacingBiz.com, we're a website focused on the sport, business, and personalities of thoroughbred racing and breeding in the Mid-Atlantic region, from Virginia on up to New Jersey and Pennsylvania. You can also follow us on Twitter at The Racing Biz. We're on Facebook. We're sort of all over the place, and you know, we're focused on sort of filling a niche that you know no one else is filling, which is really focusing on the Mid-Atlantic region, where there's a ton of racing all year long, and you know, not a ton of coverage of it. So that's the gap that we're looking to plug.
Yeah, you do a good job, and it's all about timing in life, and it's the right time for this kind of a product to be out there, because more and more mainstream is kind of relegating horse racing to to no space. I was going to say to little space, but sometimes it's no space. And as you say, there is plenty of action and plenty of news out there when you look at that Mid-Atlantic region that you cover. So it's a great product to have out there and a great time to have launched within the past few months. So certainly we'll tell people to go over there, theracingbiz.com. And part of that action that you covered this past weekend, again, was those stakes races down at Laurel. The Wide Country was the first one up, $100,000 purse for 3-year-old fillies. All the attention here clearly was on Taurus for Todd Beattie, who was so impressive in the career debut up at Aqueduct on December 21st, winning off by 11. Beattie, of course, normally in Pennsylvania, Penn National kind of guy, so it was notable, first off, that he ships over to Aqueduct to debut a horse. She did it just the right way. Would she be able to come back and do it on Saturday in the Wide Country? Well, we're going to look at the stretch run here. Number 5, Taurus, is going to be the one you want to pay attention to. 1 to 5, Taurus, pretty impressive.
Yeah, she was. I mean, this is not a stellar field that she was facing, and the time was, okay, but I think she got a 72 buyer or something like that. This is very much a fast, early, slow, late race. She and number 7, Jones and for Jerry Robb's horse, they went at it right from the get-go, and they were really flying through the opening half mile, and she got rid of Jones and for Jerry, and nobody was running late. So it was, she did it pretty easily. She did it impressively. It's what I'm not sure how to read this race exactly. You can't look at this and say this was a big step forward for her, I think. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes next. I'm not sure. We're just not sure what to make of this race because it was so fast early and then pretty slow late. I mean, this race, the running time of this race was slower than the maidens who ran the next race at 7/8 and claiming horses who ran an earlier race at 7/8. So sort of a kind of an in-between result, I'd say.
Yeah, 124-3 in that last furlong in just under 14 seconds. So certainly not stellar. But I give her kind of a pass just on the fact that she's lightly raced. Comes out of a maiden and steps into stakes company. And as you say, not a stellar field. But Jones and for Jerry is a decent horse, and did put that one away. So for me, second start being lightly raced and moving into stakes company, I thought it was a pretty good effort, but it is notable. The time of the race didn't jump off the page by any means. All right, let's move along. The race I was really looking forward to, the Miracle Wood. This is for the 3-year-old boys, $100,000 purse, 1 mile distance. We're going to see Mike Trombetta get it done here with Extra Sexy Zipster, the number 2 horse. But the one I was taking a close look at, I really like Joint Custody, the number 1 horse. Joint Custody went out, was making the early pace, and holds on to be a decent second, so I'm certainly not giving up on Joint Custody, stretching out to a mile for the first time in his career. But I think Trombetta has an interesting 3-year-old this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think both your points are right. And, this was another race where the pace was fast early. They went 46-4 for the half, 11 flat for 3/4. And, I talked with Leslie Ho, who rode Joint Custody after this race, and he was pretty disappointed. And I think he really thought that Joint Custody didn't realize Extra Sexy Hipster was coming, and by the time he figured it out, it was obviously too late. And I also know Jerry Robb, who trains Joint Custody, had felt like this was a horse who he didn't want to train aggressively enough. The horse didn't want to train aggressively enough to kind of get in shape to do these mile races and these longer races. So I suspect this race actually is going to help him. I think he'll probably move forward off this. Trombetta's got a nice looking colt there. I mean, this horse really ran well. He was clearly much the best in this group, which you didn't know, he wasn't the favorite. I think he's the 3rd favorite, but he really ran well. Trombetta's been down this road before. He took Sweet Northern Saint from this race to New York onto the Illinois Derby, and then was the favorite in the Kentucky Derby, and then ran second in the Preakness. He's not quite ready to go there yet, but it's very clear that the next move for this horse is going to be around 2 turns, and to see if he's that kind of horse.
Yeah, and I've said it a few times. I think the 3-year-olds in Maryland so far, late last year and early this year, have been kind of interesting, and it's going to be fun to see when they step out and maybe make some steps early on the Derby trail, so we'll keep our eyes on that. A little later on the card was the Native Dancer, $100,000 purse for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile and a 16th. Stretch run here, it's going to be the number 3 Bold Curlin at 7-2, getting it done, coming out of a nice win in an optional claimer last time here at Laurel. The favorite at 8-5 was Indian Jones, who 2 starts back was in the Breeders' Cup Marathon, ran 5th that day, followed up with an allowance 5th at Parks, but again, went off as the 8-5 favorite on Saturday. Those 2 will be 1-2 coming down the stretch and under the wire in the Native Dancer.
Yeah, Bold Curlin he's gotten really good, and this was the second of the 2 for trainer Mike Trombetta. The other interesting thing there is it was Victor Carrasco who rode him and did a really nice job. I mean, he really had to bide his time there, and he had to wait, and then he had to kind of bowl through a hole that was not a big hole, and when he did it, the horse really went on and won nicely. Victor Carrasco just won the Eclipse Award for apprentice rider, and now just lost his bug. So now he's got to kind of ride against big boys with no weight allowance, and he's getting a ton of mounts, and he's doing well. I mean, this kid he's potentially a big star, and this was a really nice ride. Mike Trombetta couldn't say enough nice things about the ride after the race. And Victor's really a nice kid. He was just looking for people to hug afterwards. So if you went up and interviewed him, you got hugged. If you looked at him from across the paddock, you got hugged. He was just super happy. He seems like a good kid. So it's a nice story. This is a nice horse. He's not gonna make anybody's top 10 list, but he's a nice horse, and he's in great form right now.
And it is a good story with the jockey having won the Eclipse, lost the bug, and then right around the corner wins the stakes race. So it's a nice way to get that journeyman career off. But speaking of jockeys, Speaking of journeymen, let's take a look at the final stake on that Saturday card, the What a Summer. 6 furlongs, the trip for 4-year-olds and up. The number 7, Winning Image, is going to get it done. Winning Image comes off 2 starts back, a bad finish over the synthetic at Presque Isle, then showed some speed last time at Parks before fading. But this is a horse that knows how to get to the winner's circle and was on the lead most of the way in this event at 7-2. The favorite, She's Ordained, will run second. She's Ordained comes off a nice stakes win right here at Laurel back at the end of December, so the logical favorite there. But again, as I mentioned, the story here may be the jockey, Tony Black. My partner yesterday on Loose on the Lead, Steve Bick, has Tony on regularly for a jockey segment on his radio show. Tony Black gets it done, 62 or 63 years old. According to Bick, he's won a race in each of the last 45 years. So we'll watch the stretch run here. Winning Image gets it done under Tony Black.
Yeah, I mean, the whole story is it's really a neat story. I mean, yeah, Tony Black, I think that was that his first ride of the year? I mean, he was retired. He's not retired. You know, who knows what he's up to? And you know, the winning connections of Winning Image here. Mikey Arrows, the trainer, and Marty Scafidi is the owner. I talked to those guys after a stakes win that they had at Delaware in July. When I spoke with them then, they may have changed, but when I spoke with them then, Scafidi had 1 horse in training. This was it. He's owned horses for 30 years, and he says this is by far the best. Mike Arrow's got a little stable of 14 horses, and they're mostly, you know, just hard-knocking claiming types, except for this one filly. And so they're the kind of people you like to see. I mean, Scafidi bought this horse. Steve Coughlin recommended it to him because they thought it would be a horse that'd be a nice fit at Suffolk Downs. And she didn't fit at Suffolk at all because she was too good. So she ends up at Parks where there's a lot of other earning opportunities. But, you know, and for Tony Black, I mean, it's a great story. She's the easiest kind of horse to ride, I would think. I mean, she does one thing. She goes to the lead and she goes as far as she can. And if they don't make it too hard on her early, she wins. And she does like to win. She's won, I think, 12 times now. And so just a really nice story and a good effort for the horse, and good to see that horse get back to the winner's circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the kind of connections, as you say, you like to root for. All right, Frank, we'll let you go. Again, if you go to theracingbiz.com, you can find a recap either now or later today of those Saturday races. And certainly we'll keep our eyes going forward as well, because Laurel, it seems like every 3 weeks or so, putting together nice stakes Saturdays during this winter season. Frank, thanks for the visit. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you, Seth. Take care.
All right, Frank Vespi, theracingbiz.com. We'll take our last break of the hour. When we come back, Andy Serling of the New York Racing Association. Stay tuned.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at CapitalOTB.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back. We are reaching out to Andy Serling, and we'll get him on momentarily as soon as we do make contact. In the meantime, I talked a little bit about this earlier with Gary West. I should reiterate because we talked a little bit about it on Friday, and on Friday we were looking for that workout for Shared Belief. And on Friday we were kind of searching while we were on the air, and it looks like we got the information from the prior workout, which went back, I think, to January 3rd, perhaps. So we said he worked on Friday, but we were actually looking at the prior information. It turns out Shared Belief, again, missed the workout on Friday, and we talked, again, a little bit about this with Gary West, but kind of puts them behind the 8 ball. They were supposed to have a workout not this weekend, but the prior weekend. Then it was rescheduled for Wednesday, Thursday, then Friday. So they wound up missing those. He's got a little bit of a hoof issue, and just maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball now with Shared Belief. Trainer Jerry Hollendorfer a little bit tight-lipped about the situation. So we'll keep our eyes on Shared Belief and see how soon he is able to get back to the track. Certainly looks like he'll miss the Bob Lewis out there. But again, it may be early enough in the season that they can juggle things up. We'll see. Some more news from the past week. Charlie Hayward, former president of the New York Racing Association, he's launched a brand new website. It is called thoroughbredracing.com. It will address important industry topics, racing, race courses, breeding, sales, regulatory and wagering, owners and trainers, technology, and aftercare. Just launched within the past few days, has some contributors from different places around the world, in fact. So it should be interesting. You can go over and visit it again. It is thoroughbredracing.com, Charlie Hayward's new website. This has been kind of in the wind and in the works since I first got wind of it back at Saratoga. So it's taken them a little while to get their initial effort up and running. But if you visit it now, there are articles there and you can test it for yourself. Thoroughbredracing.com, the new website from Charlie Hayward. Also, over the weekend, or leading into the weekend, including Friday and Saturday, they did have the Hollywood Park auction. Seems like the results maybe a little bit better than they expected. Even there was an article in one of the Southern California newspapers said on site there was about 350 people on Friday, maybe another 350 that were participating online. And the bidding, I went and looked at the catalog. It was really a mixed bag. Hollywood Park is closed, and it seems like they're just kind of shoveling out the building. So there was industrial equipment, there was track maintenance equipment, and then there was things that you or I might be more interested in, the memorabilia kinds of things. And it seems like the memorabilia was certainly attracting a lot of attention. But on the industrial side, folks that are interested in that were jumping in as well. For instance, there was essentially a television studio that the racetrack has to put their product, shoot and record races and put it out on a simulcast signal. So a lot of that was available as well. So somebody in the television industry may have jumped in and tried to get that. So as I say, it was kind of a mixed bag. And when you talk about results and the participation, it wasn't just a memorabilia type of auction. It was a little bit different. But the early results through the Friday and into the Saturday a little bit seemed like the results at that Hollywood Park auction were fairly decent. So, and I haven't read an absolute follow-up. Everything I saw was just kind of looking at Friday and then into Saturday, a recap of Friday and a little bit of a preview of Saturday. So I'll try to find some more information about how the entire thing kind of wound up over the two-day sale of Hollywood Park. Groupie Doll had a workout on Saturday morning. Groupie Doll gets out there and was timed in 1 minute and 4. Got the last quarter in 23 and 5. She is aiming for the career finale, February 9th, $150,000 Hurricane Birdie, a Grade 3 event down at Gulfstream Park. but it's just nice to see her get back to the racetrack. So they're looking for another breeze coming up this coming Sunday, and then it's on to the Hurricane Birdie, February 9th. So it's just nice to see Groupie Doll get back to the track for one more start. All eyes certainly will be down on Florida on February 9th. Also, National Steeplechase Association has adopted those uniform medication rules that have been making the rounds of the thoroughbred circuits in the various states. And that just seems like a good move by the Steeplechase Association. There has been a little bit of pushback from the standardbred side, which I kind of understand. You know, they're two different breeds. They treat the medications maybe a little bit differently, so I can kind of see that. But the Steeplechase Association is essentially thoroughbreds, and many of them off of the racetrack thoroughbreds, off of the flat side thoroughbreds. So it just makes sense for them to jump in and become another member of that uniform medication push that we're seeing now. Again, started in the kind of mid-Atlantic states maybe over a year ago now, and has spread nicely. So and it's a good thing for the industry to move to that uniform medication rule policy, because there just were so many discrepancies that made it hard for you would hear a lot of times about somebody getting a suspension when they shipped a horse into a state, and you know, the rules were a little bit different. All right, we have reached out to Andy Serling. We'll hit a quick couple of races with Andy for this afternoon. Andy, before we talk about a couple of races, just give us an update on what you expect the track to be, because certainly it seemed like speed was pretty favorable this weekend.
Believe it or not, and I apologize, by the way, for not being available when I said I would be. Completely my fault. I'm not working on track maintenance. They haven't got me out there yet. I do have my license, but I don't know if there's stick. So if there's stick, I can't drive the tractor. But I don't know. We'll see. You know, we'll see if it's much warmer. So I think it is possible the track could be different. But you know, you just don't know. You don't want to over-assume that it is. And I think we'll see as we see a couple of races. And you really don't need to see that many. Just see how horses are running the rail and see if anybody on the outside can gain any ground whatsoever, because they haven't been able to.
Well, my man Bick, yesterday as we wrapped up the show, he was looking for that Saturday speed to continue into Sunday, and Corey Bant almost pulled it off in the finale.
It takes an enormous bias for the mighty Corey Bant to hit the board. And Steve said he felt bad about not winning. I said you should feel pretty good about finishing second with that horse.
Yeah, I thought the second was pretty good, seeing it was the second longest price on the board. All right, before we wrap up, you got a couple for us today?
Well, you know, I mean, once again, it's very difficult because you don't really know how the track is playing. I mean, the second race, Suzanne Marie's Gold, even on yesterday's racetrack, I still think she'll beat Gillespie the speed. She's the worst to beat. Horses like Iana Princess and Run a Dub are going to be tough on a fair racetrack. The third race, American Progress, is a trips and traps horse that comes off an enormously tough trip in his debut, his well-bet debut. I expect him to break cleanly today. I expect him to be very tough in the third race. Moving forward to the fifth race, I think Finn's Quest will be tough to beat. Obviously, a fair racetrack would help him quite a bit. The seventh race, you know, if it's a biased surface, all bets are off. But if not, I really like two horses in here. Festive Spirit off the claim by Rudy Rodriguez, who I think moved prematurely on his first start off a layoff. But also Buckeye Heart is a horse that should be a fair price. And his trainer, John Terranova, has exceptional numbers stretching out horses from sprints to routes, especially on the inner track. So I think on a fair racetrack, both are very, very interesting. There's a 1-10 shot in Auburn in the feature. I like that one. That's my safe bet today. I wouldn't make it Serling's best bet, though, 220.
The only thing there is, I mean, on the numbers, this horse lays over the field. But there might be a little bit of a negative horse for a course angle, maybe. I mean, if Ford tries over the track and doesn't have a win, I mean, I think you can make that argument.
Well, it was second if you were stretching to an overwhelming favorite last time. Ran a stake race the time before that as the Rabbit. And the other times was before the horse got any good.
Yeah, as I say.
Good luck with that.
I'm saying if you're looking to beat the favorite, you can maybe hang your hat on that.
I think if you're looking to beat the favorite, maybe you should, probably crazy. But listen, I try to beat a lot of favorites.
And let me ask you before we wrap up, Abra, that favorite in that race, being ridden by Taylor Rice. What are your thoughts on her so far?
I think she's ridden well. I mean, she's getting incredibly live mounts for an apprentice that just got here, and obviously her agent is doing an incredible job. I don't even know who her agent is, but he's doing a great job. But, you know, I will say she's really taking advantage of the opportunity she's gotten. And as a rider who likes to stick to the rail, she's certainly done well in the last couple of days. But, you know, as you know, a rider's job is not to try to win races with horses maybe that shouldn't be winning. A rider's job is to win with the horses they're supposed to win on. And I would say that Taylor Rice is getting the job done way more often than not on horses that are alive. So for that ring, I would credit her as just getting here. She's doing a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a great point. She is absolutely getting live mounts. All right, Andy, absolutely appreciate the visit this morning. And again, we're paying a lot of attention to Mondays because I think this is a great idea. I will be interested to see at the end of the season how the numbers add up on this experiment. But I think you're kind of filling a void here in the wintertime. So I wish you a lot of success. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks. It's good talking to you. I'm sorry once again that I wasn't available when I should have been. I will correct that next week.
All right, no problem. Andy Serling from the New York Racing Association. That'll wrap things up for Racing Across America for this Monday morning. Before Andy, we had Frank Vespi. Before that, a little Gary West. All of that kicking off this week, again, after a big weekend of racing. We'll continue to talk a little bit about that with more of the guests as we progress. Tomorrow, don't forget, we have Gary Johnson back on board from Beulah. I will be interested to hear his recounting of the weekend out at Las Vegas, where he did make the final day, the top 50. So we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow with Gary. All of that when Racing Across America continues. We're here every Monday through Friday from 10 until 11 a.m. Enjoy the races this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.